Okay, well, good evening, everyone. If you're in the US or late afternoon and evening, it's around about 6 p.m. Eastern time. I think it's about 10 o'clock in the UK, and it's a light and brightened, well, actually rather dark morning in Western Australia here at the moment at a disgustingly early 6 a.m. I've got a dear friend of mine, Matt Brennan, here today. Matt is Associate Director of Cybersecurity at a company called US Cold Storage. US Cold Storage, for those who don't know, is the third largest cold chain logistics company in the United States. And Matt and I have worked together for many years. And I think one of the key things I wanted to bring alive today was we've learned so much together over so many years. I'm very proud to know Matt. I'm very proud to see the work that he has done in really driving maturity. And I think today we really want to build on the poll that I sent out a week or two ago. That poll was fascinating. And I ran this poll also live at CISO Sydney a few weeks ago as well at the conference. And it was around maturity. And fascinating. I'm so keen on understanding the why behind maturity and why we do things. And I think this really is, how do we build mature cyber capabilities and response? And in the poll, only 50% of people are even working and beginning on that journey. It's very rare that we see these things. So let's go straight in. This is a raw, unscripted, gloves off conversation. So Matt, I guess we both got to get it right. But do you want to just share a few things with everyone about what your view is on building a mature program? Because it's a really difficult thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely has to be planned, and don't expect it all to just magically appear. When you set out on this, you're very eager in the beginning. You're trying to drive a little FUD up the chain to get people to notice what's going on in the business. And, sometimes you get reactions that can benefit you to get you something to help. But in the end, it's not really driving real change within the business, right? At least
Interesting.
that's been what I found. Yeah.
Root cause. Why is it hard to instigate that change, Matt? And you're talking about the wider business. How is it? What have you found as the stickiness that sort of gets that maturity journey going?
Well, to actually drive it, for us, it seemed to be a path of finally getting things standardized. Like we got a framework from our parent company of what they wanted to do with cybersecurity standards, right? So once we had a little bit of something in place, we were able to start driving some effects into processes and stuff that weren't there before, right? So then once we got going on there, it becomes develop risk, a whole risk function. And, we really started to move things that way, right? Like communicating to the business about IT stuff really doesn't get you too far. Just talking to them about viruses and CVEs, they look at you like, oh, okay, But if you can transfer this stuff into like corporate risk terms and ways that really can impact the business and show them how, adversely the business can be impacted, finally you guys are speaking the same language, and then it really feels a lot easier to move after that.
Okay, so raw lessons learned. Number one, let's get straight into that. You have to make it meaningful for them, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that, Matt? It's so difficult, isn't it? Everyone says engage the business, right? Check. How do you actually do that?
Well, at first we started as an operation within IT, right? Which proved difficult because you're essentially in the thing you're supposed to be monitoring. So all of my reported security actions were going to the IT director, which, was kind of like falling on deaf ears. Not complaining. That's how a lot of people probably are to this day. At least somebody was doing it. We were taking steps. We were fixing things, but it never really escalated past a certain level, right? What we started doing was, steering committees, things where you can get other people in the room, other, people to listen to you as far as leadership within the business. That helped. Talking to parent companies and partners and getting their input and kind of collaborating with your teams really helps a lot, to drive perception, right? It's different when the guy coming from inside the company is telling you all these things that you have to do. But when you hear it from others and you hear it from, other professionals in the same field, I think it carries a lot of weight. So that was
It
one
does.
thing we used early.
Okay. What were the lessons learned in that? Where would you say that things didn't go as you sort of expected, and what did you do to transform that, Matt, to bring that alive and really get them engaged?
Well, like I said, a lot of it started with risk.
Mm,
Eventually we moved under the CFO, who is the chairman of all the risk in the company, and that
okay.
really opened up the relationship for security, right? Like after that, to me, it blossomed because we were able to identify risk as a business process, get
Mm.
it into the register, get it in front of the audit committees, the boards, get it into the papers, and once it becomes a company problem, then it's something that people want to address, right?
Right. There's the answer. It becomes a company problem. I haven't heard anyone. I love saying these things. I always call it out, as you know. I haven't heard someone say that before. I genuinely have never heard someone say that before. It's be not make it the company problem, but once it's become the company problem. Okay, so what we're saying is all this stuff about cyber, all the practitioner stuff you and I know about, and the audience here knows about, is actually just one spoke of that wheel, right? It's got to become the company problem. It's got to become risk driven. It's got to become something that is almost owned and valued by them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's been like the big journey we've been on. Once you start out in security, you grab all the low hanging fruit, you throw the tools to keep the attackers out. But once everybody hits that initial point, the
Mm,
inside of the house is a big mess. And it's because there's so much to change, right? You can get the easy wins. I could do all the things my team could do themselves. But then what happens? You're incorporating other business units in order to fix things and get things, you know, finance departments, HR departments, other IT departments, development departments, all with their own processes and schedules and projects, and it gets difficult, right? A lot of it got washed under pretty quick in the beginning. And then, once, like you said, it becomes a risk, all of a sudden you get that top down kind of blessing from everybody. And, all of a sudden everybody's working towards the same goals. Um,
that's kind of interesting. I'm going to do something which is quite unusual here. So, really, what we've got is it sounds to me that there's kind of, I'm going to draw it on my pad here. I don't know whether everyone can see. There's almost an initial peak, right, of activities, the
yeah.
low hanging fruit. Then we drop down where it suddenly goes almost, dare I say, quite quiet. And we have
Yes.
to then start boiling that pot of water. It takes ages to shift it, right, before we then get the linear growth.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. And it's frustrating. I've been there, and I've talked to others that have been there, and I feel like a lot of people have experienced it. Luckily, I get to work with a few other sister companies, and we're all along the same journey. And it's, everybody has their real problem. Like when you're waiting for part of the operation, and once cyber becomes part of the operation, it's a beautiful thing. And you're right, your curve, it starts going right up. Um,
That's interesting. I we said that we would do this always these live things raw, gloves off, and perhaps with an element of or a great element of humanity and enthusiasm. It sounds to me it's like growing vegetables, right? It's very easy to go and put a whole bunch of stuff in and get some early wins.
yeah,
But if you're going to do that systematically, it takes really understanding your system and all the components, all the feeds and the, you know, components of that to get a continual harvest, right? And over different conditions, different seasons. Very easy to get the quick wins. Are we obsessed, Matt, by the quick wins? And as cyber people, we go and grab those quick wins. And of course, they're the technical controls, they're the SOC, they're the kind of things like
mhm.
that. And we then perhaps almost start to fail initially because we detach from the real thing that you just described, which is making it the company problem.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I think a lot of that is driven from look at how a lot of these programs are birthed, right? It's a response or a board request or something like
Mm,
that. Like, you guys better start doing cybersecurity, right?
mm,
So then somebody comes in, right? Like you, does a pen test. now they got these 20 things that are critical. We got to fix these now, right? This is going to the board. This is our first big audit. So then you overreact, you buy tools to fix this, to get this thing running, right? But then it becomes a point for your business. Like, is that secure? Is that the level of security you're at? You're just completely reactive all the time. You're just waiting for events to happen, and then you get a new toy to buy and remedy the problem, or do you actually move to a proactive security structure, right? Like where you're actually detecting things and seeing problems and driving the different changes within the system.
Lesson number 2, we get the buy-in, we go buy the tools. And, you know how many times have you and I had a coffee over this one, working and thinking about tooling. And, tell me your view, because you know mine on tool rationalization. We cannot spend our way secure. We've got to instead think our way secure.
Yeah.
There's so much danger around that, isn't there, Matt, that people basically think tooling is the answer. And all so far in the last 10 minutes of this conversation, we haven't even talked about tooling. We talk about the business.
Yeah. I mean, tools are a big part of security, right? But what are you using them for? If you're at the point where you have everything on SOAR automation and all your things are being shut off, more power to you. I envy you. I will be there one day, But let's not kid ourselves. You don't start that way just because you bought something, right? Like that's the thing with tools. There's no standard. There's no best practice, right? Like if you look at my company and your company, we're both companies, but we have way different things we're trying to protect or where our interests lie, and the way we interact with customers are completely different, right? And that's true with every company. There is no set structure to like what tool you can run out and buy that's going to fix your problem. You got to find your problems, look at the tools in that market, and make a good decision. And don't sign a 3-year contract up front. That's about the only regrettable advice I can give you.
That's really interesting. A mate of mine I saw last week, we were working on kind of the mining sector and use cases there. And it was fascinating to hear from him how the vendors come in and pitch that tool. And then I link it with another CISO I was working with in the States that's one of our clients, who his words are, and I'll paraphrase him and I'll quote him in an essay shortly when we write it together. But he said, it's very easy to go and we define that tool and then we go and buy it. And then he said, then we implement it, brackets, a little bit, close brackets. Then we go and mature it, brackets, we don't. And when I was listening to that lesson learned, what was really interesting on the mining use case was all the vendors, they solve the X problem, but the X problem is a technical problem. It isn't necessarily something that will manifest specifically or have the same kind of coverage in logistics company in the United States of America versus a mining company in Western Australia.
Yeah.
But we all expected to be the panacea and solve that problem, right?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that's what like the fit is as important as anything, like you got to look at your business. What am I trying to do with this tool? Is this the solution to check a box, or is this a solution to kind of generate more information, generate alerting, generate proactive behavior is what I like to look for. Like that's ultimately where I would love to have my security layout, really. Just know when something happens and be able to address it before it gets bad.
Okay, so point number 3 then on our learning journey, rather than sort of having the usual talk and summarizing at the end, let's summarize as we go. Point number 3 is you are holding yourself to account here, Matt. Now, you speak very humbly about this. I know what you guys do, and I'm proud to work with you. But more importantly, I see that you don't accept wins and successes as, so many do in cyber. You're pretty humble about it because you know the implication, right? So you're constantly on your own back and against yourself to try and do better and mature that, and which is clearly the topic of this, right? Where does that come from? Is that something from within? Is it something that the business, initiates? You need a huge dynamism of energy to hold yourself to account like that, don't you?
I mean, I wouldn't say energy. I mean, as much as, I don't know, call it an insanity, if you will. But, we take a lot of pride. Like my team and I have a lot of guys that have been doing it as long as the program's been there. We're all pretty invested. And, we're smart about it. We're not a huge team, so we have to have as much efficiency as we need. Um, other things. The first time I bought a PAM, I bought the industry standard PAM, and it was so big. I had a two other guy team, right? Like we couldn't administrate the thing. There's people hired on LinkedIn just to run that PAM. I didn't realize this. So what do you do? Do I forever hold that PAM there, or do I accept the fact we bought the wrong thing, come in, buy something that fits, buy something that scales with your team and also scales to effectiveness in the business? Because the first one I bought didn't do anything for the business, right? Like
that's an honest answer, isn't it? Because we're all expected that, hey, we're in cybersecurity, we're good at this stuff, and we can solve it. So you identified an industry. So point number 4, then, industry solutions don't necessarily solve specific company use cases, and
yeah,
you might have to have a whacking great big skill set just to do one thing. And most people, even in large orgs like yours, don't necessarily have the human power to do so, right?
no, not really. A lot of these things, um, people learn on the go. You're learning from professionals. You can bring in consultants, but for the most part, like, everybody when they buy a new product gets that whole first month or so of setup and customer relations, and then you pretty much don't hear from the vendor ever again until it's renewal time, right? So
why? Other than the thing that gets my adrenaline going, that the damn sales process, and someone that's in it for themselves, let alone their own company, let alone their clients. That's
yeah.
I often say one of the biggest adversaries to cybersecurity are cybersecurity vendors selling licenses. But why is it, Matt, that there's a detachment from that onboarding process when everyone celebrates customer success?
Well, like I said, it depends on your notion of what you're installing it for in the first place. Some
Right.
people are celebrating because now they check the box, on their board requirements, so they're happy, right? Don't have to worry about that one. What's next? Or
Mm.
people are celebrating the fact that they're hopefully birthing a new process that's going to address some changes, right? You know, like when I got that PAM in, all of a sudden we started birthing, how to properly manage credentials and people signing in and remote contractor access and, other different processes all birthed out from that. So there was also a celebration around those types of things, right?
Interesting. So you're celebrating the outcomes of these things rather than the initiation.
Well, I do because I know what we have to do to get where I want us to be, right?
Mm.
Like anything is a win. You got to celebrate your victories. You do have to take them, and I do. We do celebrate. We are happy that we put this stuff out, but that's the difference, and one of the biggest gaps that even we find ourselves trying to address. It's everybody these days is so project driven. It's like next project, next project. When's the
Right.
maintenance occur, right? So it's like not only do you have to roll all these things out, but how are you going to maintain them? How are you going to evolve them? Like you're referring back to your friend, like we mature the product this much, right? Like, well, let's see, like let's invest more time into it and see if we can get more from it and more functionality. So that's been a lot of what we do is kind of really hone in on what we need and then find the best ways to get the most we can out of it because we are kind of limited in the grand scheme of things budget wise.
I like that, though. I like limitation and constraint. You know that. And so the lesson number 5 out of this raw and just lessons learned process, which has been a multi-year thing for you, is don't get drawn into the project aspect of it. Get into the celebration, the wins of making something really work. That's
Yeah,
got to be the element here, isn't it?
I to me it does. You got to be able to show tangible progress. I feel like when you're doing these things, don't you? At least
Mm.
whether it be internally for yourself or for your team's effort or what. And everybody likes achieving something. Everybody loves a win. Like I'm not saying that's a thing, but yeah, I think my intent though is to chase and fix problems. I would
Okay.
love to be able to just have that day where I know I could go in and let my shoulders drop finally. But then that's probably the day we get now, right? So
What? Okay. So there's. I like that very much. I respect even better, rather than like that very much, that you're holding that to account, and it's that kind of really celebrating and driving the wins from within on those components that you've invested in. And, you're essentially driving change there, Matt, aren't you? You're not just doing cybersecurity. You're looking for the uplift and the kind of, what can we do with this? And celebrating when you do get outcomes and learning. Now, lesson number 6, let's learn.
Yeah. I mean, driving change is all I have left to do. We've gotten all the low hanging fruit. We've nailed the doors, hopefully as closed as we can on the outside, right? Now it's left to driving change on employees, making the right decisions. It's driving change on getting management to help get disaster recovery in place for if something does happen. It's getting management to help me get people patch things quicker. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff to where you're driving the change, right? Like that's stuff you can't do by yourself anymore, is the way I look at driving change these days, right? So now you got to sell your security to a whole nother team and make them buy into that process and then make it your process together, which is not easy. So that's why some programs stop there. They're adequate skating by, and they're the ones that pay for it when they get hit, and then there's others that really try to affect change and getting things in place. Whether successful or not, at least if you're trying, you're improving and you're making yourself stronger.
My goodness me. An epiphany at 6:21 a.m. for me. This is awesome. And it's, Matt, what a wonderful phrase. So many people sit in the it's adequate phase. How interesting. It's adequate. It's doing its job until it's not. And you and I both know, and all the things we see in our colleagues wider in the industry, that what's the phrase we use? It's always green until it's not green. And when it's not green, it goes non-green very quickly.
And loudly.
And what, sorry?
I said, and loudly.
And loudly, yes. Well, and wildly and loudly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It escalates, doesn't it? There's another little curve there. Suddenly, green, 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 green. There's a control measure. Things are adequate. We're seeing things responding. We're doing BAU with respect to prevention and detection until suddenly, wow, up goes something that's got us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I take no more sanctity in the fact that we have everything figured out, right? Like I don't believe that one bit at all. Like every day, I've been doing this for a few years now, and it's, oh, I didn't even know that policy existed, or why is that in place? Like, where did that come from? You know what I mean? So it's like that falls back onto trying to drive these changes. You got to look at the tech debt that your company has, right? Like my company has 20 years of tech debt in different development projects across different, Active Directory environments, across all kinds of different things. And it's, going through and addressing all these fixes while still progressing and maintaining all the current projects that we have, that we budgeted for and that we got to get on, is kind of the real big work, right?
Right.
Not fun. It's not glamorous. It's just, it's what you need to do to secure your place. It's not always pretty,
Okay. Lesson number 8. It's not glamorous. How interesting is this? A year and a half, 2 years ago, I was talking to a mate of mine, Mandy over at Elastic. She's the CISO there. And we hit on this, and we had to press the record button on this one. It was so cool because I said, why do you think, people are not doing these fundamentals, non-glamorous things? And she said, and I thought it was just a perler, and we quoted her on it. She said, because they're boring. And I thought, wow, if ever anyone's just called that out. And you share something the same as she does and many others, which is you've stayed time in cycle. You've kept immersing yourself in this problem continually over a period of time, and so have your team. So there's a stability there that so many organizations suffer from, Matt, don't they? They don't have stability there. People are coming in, people are going all the time. How can you build and mature a resilience program and a response program if the doors opening, doors closing, people coming in all the time? That's a reality so many people face, isn't it? What do you do about that?
We try to hire fit as much as we do skill these days. I mean, there's a lot of,
Interesting.
I know they claim, there's 600,000 security job openings across the US. You know,
Mm,
I understand that, it's not like everybody gets their pick of the litter. And trust me, I'm not Google. I don't get superstars all the time. But the guys I do get are superstars because they've made themselves superstars, right? And it's
wow.
building that environment where everybody crushes it together. They always talk to each other. They're always engaging. Like when we hire, it's like coming into a semi family, and it's not always perfect, but we're us, we're our group, we're our team. And that's what we build is just a team, honestly, when it comes down to it.
So you've got your team. I don't want to say culture necessarily. It's an overused word, perhaps sometimes a powerful word, but you've got the dynamic right. You've got the trust. You've got Matt, you've built a learning org within your org in
Yeah.
all sorts of pockets, right? That's got to be lesson number 9 here. Build a learning based approach together.
Yeah. I mean, we take our team to, Black Hat every year, DEF
Mm,
CON, I encourage certifications. I had 2 guys
mm.
get the CISP last year. I had 1 guy get an OSCP last year, just while working, right? Like while doing their regular job. So congratulations to them. Like they do an amazing job. I work for a wonderful company that encourages that thing and helps people. And you'd be fools not to take advantage of it. I've done it time and time again myself. But yeah, people should always go. You should be aware and go to shows and talk to people and engage with other people in our field because you start to see the similar problems and you start to see, you know, like I said, our businesses are different when it comes to data and stuff. We're 2 different things, but when it comes down to functionality, and security, we're still chasing the same goals. So yeah, I think learning and engagement are a huge part of effective security, and traveling and staying up to date.
There's an energy to that, isn't there? And it's very hard to maintain the energy when you're in a long period of, I don't know, some of the best things we've ever done are the ones that are hardest, the most long tail, the ones that don't give the immediate upfront reward, and they're way, down the maturity stack, and you got to graft at it. But there's a real great sense of satisfaction, isn't there, when you do take that approach? And where I'm going with this is in my little graph, which I must now draw. That little sort of spike. We got the quick wins, and then
Yeah.
we go to sort of the pit of, no one's listening, organization change, all that kind of stuff. You're in there. Is that what keeps you going as you then come out of that really long gradual tail? And are you arguing for it's more a sustained long-term approach as opposed to kind of those big exciting wins that cybersecurity professionals like to chase?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is because like if you really were to do a successful security program, I really think your little bell curve would be a quick little hump, a big valley, and then a long big hill that would far outsize the quick hump, right? Because
Yep.
you didn't really affect that much change in the beginning. You think you did because you just bought a security tool and now you're doing cybersecurity,
Mm.
like, but you're not doing security yet. And you're in this pit because nobody else wants to listen to you. You keep flooding people, but now they see you coming down the hallway and turn and walk the other direction or duck in the bathroom because they don't want to take anymore. You know what I mean? Like you got to find a way to become part of the business. You got to find a way to become like people need to want to work with you. They need to like pull you into meetings because they're worried about security, not have me chase them down and knock on their doors to let me in the meeting, like
Oh, wow. You've achieved a paradigm shift. So rather than, as you say, running to the bathroom or the emergency coffee that suddenly had a requirement, they're now saying, "Hey, Matt, I'm really worried about this. What help me, please. Please help me."
yeah.
The reverse
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, that's trying to build a successful culture with your employees, right? Like
Mm, mm,
people should think about security.
mm,
I've done enough. We've had enough things happen to where we're able to drive it home. My
mm.
management does a great job. I get to speak to, senior leadership at our meetings. I get to talk to the board. I get to talk to the audit committee. So, I get to talk to a lot of people about security now, which is nice. And what that does is it makes everybody's focus on it. Like right now on our corporate risk register, I think we probably are the highest risk on the corporate register with cyber right now. You know, when you think about that from a business perspective, that you're that big of a corporate risk, and if you're not speaking with the business or you're not part of the business, you're not really doing anything.
How interesting is that? Yeah, how many cybersecurity departments and units do we see that don't stay on that old track? Clyde, I know Clyde's over at Thomson Reuters. He's just put a sort of a point and question in here, which I think is valuable. Key challenges here is breaking out from having cyber reporting to IT and reporting directly to the board, the president, the CEO. You're kind of micro engaging with people, aren't you? At different levels, it becomes a lattice approach almost.
Yeah. No, I went through that very thing that he submitted. Like I said, I started in IT, reporting to the IT director, and then eventually got moved to reporting under the CFO. And to me, it's the right step. I feel like, like I look at security as much of a business risk perspective operation than I do as an IT operation, right? Like I don't own any systems other than my security tools. I'm not allowing people access in the files, like, so you're not an IT operation. You really shouldn't be there because you should be reporting on IT. You shouldn't have to, like, the report shouldn't die with the IT director. So yeah, I think until you have that line of communication, you're kind of really not getting as far as you can.
I getcha. So lesson number 12 is the issue should not die and lie with the IT function here, which is interesting. Now, sorry, you were about to say?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
My final question before we start to wrap up, Matt, is I used to get quite one of my irks was this kind of almost trend. You'd hear it so much as as trendy speak in the industry. Oh, it's not when we get hit. If we get hit, it's when. And I almost sort of cringed when I heard that because I always felt that there was more of a depth to that, which is that's not cool. That's not trendy. That's very, very serious. And we can't rely on the fact that this will happen. My argument was always, okay, there is an inevitability about being hit, but surely that should happen at the end of a cycle when you address things, refine things, sweated things down, dealt with the 101s, the important, boring stuff. And then, there's residual risk where we're all constantly going to have to fight on this. And it's almost like, an inevitability. But I'm now seeing in all my conversations around the world, US, all throughout the sort of three major, Midwest and East, UK, Europe, Singapore, and Australia, this kind of almost trend now to calling incidents and hacks different things to meet certain language. I know you'd chuckle on that one. Tell me about that. Why are we doing this? Are we sort of, micro segmenting an issue here?
I wouldn't know. I still call an incident an incident, and I call pretty much anything that happens an incident. So, I actually like incidents, right? I'll give you a good statistic why you should like incidents, right? Most companies' cyber spend is about 10% of the IT budget, right? Well, guess what? Companies post-hack get up to 20 usually. So people should be on the, like I said, incidents aren't always doomed unless you're shut down and you're completely underwater, right? You can use an incident to be a lesson. You can use an incident to help drive change. That can be a real eye opener for maybe people that really didn't pay as much attention as they thought they did. So
how interesting.
I don't know why you would go about making it something else when, now granted there's different levels of incidents, where CISOs are canned because of it and things of that nature. And I'm not implying that, but incidents aren't bad. Like I said, to me, they're lessons. So
I think that's fantastic. There are lesson number 13. Incidents are lessons. Opportunities, almost, if you want to view it like that. Near misses. I posted this week, as you saw, on near misses, and there's so many near misses. And suddenly, I know this sounds really dumb, but it occurred to me that I'm really lucky personally because I see so many near misses. Whereas if you take CISO to CISO in industry, they don't. They might see their ones internally, or they may not see them because they didn't even know they were a near miss, which is even worse.
Mhm.
But when we see them across aggregate, across so many industries, so many different companies, so many different countries, and you learn, and it's become a very, very humbling thing. Matt, let's wrap up. What do we do going forward from here? I know that's a big ephemeral question, but you know, do we stay humble? Do we stay working the problem? What do we do if we're going to drive
I
maturity? What would you say?
I would say you got to be part of the leadership, right? It's
Hmm.
not leadership versus you. It's not leadership versus anything. It's like we're all in the business.
Hmm.
Now you find the best path to get that up there. Is that risk and compliance? Is that driving governance changes? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Is that driving different kinds of projects?
Hmm.
Find a way, like just kind of find the path that works for your place is about the best thing I could say to people, because it's all different, because leaderships are different, businesses are different. There's no one big model, but there's a way. Like I promise you, there's a way. You just kind of have to find the one that makes sense for where you're at.
I like that. Find what works for you. Find your way. Stick at it. I mean, here's a lesson for people watching this, and I'm humbled by it. Third largest cold chain logistics company in America. That is not it's a serious undertaking. But when you balance that, the humbleness that you have, the approach that you have to always trying to learn and help your team share, challenge me, challenge our team, all those kind of things, isn't that the way it should be? It doesn't matter who we work for and what grandiose brand there are. We've still got to work fundamental, difficult, challenging, long-tail problems.
Well, definitely. And I think that's the way the industry is, honestly. Like most people I meet, like you and others across the industry,
Mm,
are kind of pretty level to understand that that's the way we do it, right? It's trucking along, and hopefully you're there long enough to drive real change when you're at a place, right? I've been fortunate enough to see it at mine, and I love seeing it. I'm so proud of it. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
but at the same time, like you got people that are out to get money and they job bounce. That's fine. You know what I mean? If that you got to find why you're in this field. I find that a lot of your people in these positions really have to care about the place that they're at and really want to affect positive change in order to make a difference. Though.
Right. Lesson number 14 then, if I've caught and kept up with count. Keep at it. Take pride. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sweat the long tail. Matt, I think this has been the most wonderful, gloves off, honest conversation. What I'm really proud of is this is no different. This is no show to everyone. It's you know, just how we normally talk, and that's what it should be. And no
yeah,
one knows it all. We don't, you don't. Together we do. As an industry, together we do. And we just need to help each other, right?
absolutely. Yeah, and
Mm,
it's a community, and it's get as many positive people as we can into it.
agreed. Agreed. I'm going to take a lot from this. I'm going to re-listen to this later on today with a cup of coffee, and I think I'll draw out the points of these lessons learned. I hope that everyone's found this valuable in terms of, you know, key steps and things that we learn. And they're not exciting. They're not wonderful and up in lights, and glittering. They're quite humbling, basic, long tail things. But I'd like to say, Matt Brennan, my dear friend and client and colleague, and I don't know, journeyer and coffee drinker, and someone who helps drive me. Thank you for sharing this. It's been really interesting to talk to you live here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll end the stream now. Thank you.